All right, so you think you know Vampirella's origin story, right? Distant planet, Draculon, rivers of blood, twin suns, the whole deal. But what if I told you that's, well, not the whole truth? Not even close. The real story is so much weirder and, surprisingly, a lot closer to home than you'd ever guess. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's just rip the Band-Aid off. Draculon, the place you've always heard about, it's not some planet in another galaxy. Get this. It's actually an alternate version of our moon. Yeah, our moon just kind of tucked away in this other dimension called Arcadia. And that, well, that changes everything. We're not just talking about an alien anymore. We're talking dimensional, metaphysical, and it's all happening right next door, cosmically speaking.
So, an alternate moon. What does that even mean, right? Let's try to unpack just how strange and honestly kind of unsettling this whole dimension really is.
So, Arcadia. It's not a place you can just point a telescope at. You gotta think of it more like a twilight dimension, almost a psychic shadow of our moon. And it's not exactly a paradise. We're talking a dense, fevered forest on a world that's literally in a dying state. But here's the real kicker. This was the personal domain of Vampirella's mother, Lilith. So for Vampy, this isn't a home. It's more like a tailor-made prison built from magic and twisted memories. Now, to really get a grip on Arcadia, you've got to understand its rules. Except there aren't any. Not really. And this is where the story goes from weird to completely off the rails.
Okay, so the single most important rule of Arcadia is there are no stable rules. The comic calls this metaphysical fluidity, which is a fancy way of saying reality itself is totally unstable. It's like living inside a dream you can't wake up from. One day gravity works, the next, who knows? The concepts of right and wrong, good and evil, they could literally flip overnight. This constant, mind-bending chaos is absolutely central to everything about Vampirella's story.
And that's what this quote just nails perfectly. I mean, think about it. How are you supposed to figure out who you are when the very ground beneath your feet and the sky above your head can change at any second? Her entire world, her whole sense of self, is built on cosmic quicksand.
Living in a world of chaos is one thing, but what happens when someone figures out how to weaponize that chaos? Well, that brings us to the true architect of all of Vampirella's confusion, her own mother.
You see, Lilith isn't just a mom in this story. She's called the writer. She's learned how to take that fluid reality of Arcadia and use it like a weapon against her own daughter. Her whole game isn't about raising a child, it's about controlling one, by constantly messing with her head and rewriting her history on a whim. And she has a method to her madness. She uses something called a magic mirror to just implant contradictory memories directly into Vampirella's brain. So one day Vampy believes she's an alien refugee from a dying planet. The next day, nope, now she's the demonic daughter of the first woman. And this isn't some comic book retcon for us, the readers. For Vampirella, it is pure psychological torture, designed to create profound identity issues and trauma, so she'll always be dependent on Lilith. All of this manipulation leads to a very specific philosophical condition. It's called ressentiment. Now, it's a fancy word, but it basically means this deep, toxic resentment you feel towards your creator, or in this case, your manipulator. Your whole identity gets twisted into just being a reaction to them. Vampirella isn't free to be herself. She's trapped in a loop, constantly reacting to whatever lies Lilith has cooked up this time. So, how in the world do you escape a prison that's literally built out of your own memories? Well, the answer isn't to find some real truth. The answer is to learn how to interpret the lies themselves. And that's where a new character comes into play.
To fight back against Lilith, the chaotic writer, the story brings in a wise interpreter. Her name is Sophia, which, by the way, literally means wisdom. And she doesn't show up to give Vampirella another origin story to believe in. No, she's here to give her the tools to make sense of the mess she's already in.
And you can see how they're complete opposites, right? Lilith, the writer, imposes these false narratives to control her daughter. But Sophia, the interpreter, teaches Vampirella how to read those narratives, find the contradictions, and ultimately take over the story herself. The goal switches from manipulation and control to empowerment and self-authorship. It's the difference between being a puppet and learning how to grab your own strings.
And this leads to the ultimate goal of what Sophia is teaching. It's to help Vampirella become what the philosopher Nietzsche called the Übermensch, or the overhuman. Now what's that? It's basically a person who completely transcends being a victim.
They look at all the values and meanings forced on them, reject them, and decide to create their own purpose, just through sheer force of will.
Okay, so this brings us to the final, amazing transformation. This is how Vampirella takes a lifetime of pain, trauma, and confusion and forges it into her greatest strength.
And here it is, the big breakthrough. She finally understands there isn't one true story hiding underneath all the lies. The chaos, the contradictions, the manipulation itself, that is the truth of her existence. And as soon as she accepts that, really accepts it, she's finally on the path to being free.
And just like that, she completely flips the script on her mother. Instead of that poisonous resentment, she chooses affirmation. She basically looks at her entire messed up history and says, yes, all of it, I'll take it. The alien, the demon, all the contradictions. She decides to own the chaos instead of letting it own her.
The result? A total game changer. She embraces what's called the Dionysian spirit, that love of chaos and contradiction. She literally weaponizes her jumbled memories, making them a source of unpredictable power instead of weakness. She becomes the one and only author of her own being, achieving this self-begotten state. At this point, she's completely immune to manipulation. She's not a character in Lilith's twisted book anymore. She is the author.
Which leaves us with one last kind of heavy question, doesn't it? Vampirella's whole story is this epic metaphysical battle for her own soul. It's about turning a history of lies into a personal declaration of independence. And it really makes you think, if your past was just a collection of lies, could you forge them into your own greater truth?